The Pitt Season 2 ended, and somehow it gave us answers while also leaving behind 100 new questions. Is Robby coming back broken or better? Did Al-Hashimi just become the new person he can't escape emotionally? Is Mohan really gone or just gone from our screen? And why does Season 3 suddenly feel like it might be the most important season the show has done yet? Because after everything we now know, one thing is clear. Season 3 is not about starting over. It is about living with the...
What is up, everyone? Welcome back to Breakdown Epic. Now that the Pitt Season 2 is officially over, we finally have some real information about where Season 3 is heading. And honestly, the more I think about it, the more it feels like the next season is not going to be about shock value or a fresh reset. It is going to be about fallout, trust, healing, and the people who were changed by that final shift, whether they admit it or not. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers.
Let's break down what Season 3 is really setting up. What we now know about Robby, Al-Hashimi, Mohan, and the rest of the team, and why this next chapter could quietly become the strongest one the show has done. Season 3 is about consequences, not cliffhangers. The first thing I want to say is this. I do not think Season 3 is going to open by trying to answer every finale question in a loud, dramatic way. And honestly, that is a good thing. Because the Pitt works best when it remembers that these are not mystery box characters. These are damaged people whose choices...
Not Robby is cured. Not Robby is back to normal. But Robby is trying. And that is the right direction. Because the most honest version of this story is not a miraculous comeback. It is a man who has spent years tying his identity to one brutal environment, now trying to learn how to exist without letting that environment define every part of him. That is incredibly hard. And that is why I think Season 3 could give us the richest version of Robby yet. Not the mythic Kending, not the emotionally sealed-off leader, but the version of him who has finally been forced to admit that being useful is not the same thing as being okay. One thing I really want the show to lean into is that final moment with baby Jane Doe. Not literally in the sense of making him her father, because that apparently is not happening, but emotionally. That scene mattered because
That is not something a character just shrugs off by next season. And honestly, that is why I think Al-Hashimi may become one of the most compelling characters in Season 3. Because now she has two conflicting drives living inside her at the same time. First, she is likely going to want to prove that she still belongs, that she is still sharp, still capable, still worthy of the role she fought for. Second, she is not going to forget what Robby did to her. That creates fantastic tension. In some ways, she almost becomes the new mirror character for him. Like Langdon forced Robby to confront guilt and failure from one direction, Al-Hashimi may now force him to confront what happens when people stop trusting his emotional instincts entirely. And if the show is smart, it will not rush this. It will let that fracture breathe. Because the strongest version of this dynamic is one where they still need to work together, still respect parts of each other.
And through all of that, she remained incredibly watchable. So yes, if she is absent from the next shift, people are going to feel that. But here is what I think is interesting about it from a story perspective. Mohan's distance may actually become part of Robby's consequence arc. Because if someone he mistreated is no longer around in the same way, that absence becomes a silent reminder of what he did. Sometimes losing access to someone is a bigger punishment than one final argument ever could be. Would I rather still have her in the active shift? Yes. Do I think the show loses something without her? Also yes. But if Season 3 uses that absence emotionally, instead of just treating it like a production fact, then it can still matter dramatically. The rest of the team might quietly become the best part. What excites me most about Season 3 is not just the major returning players. It is the wider team. Because now the show has an opportunity to rotate focus more confidently.
If Parker Ellis gets a larger role, that immediately gives the show fresh energy. The night shift world already feels like it has a very different tone from the chaos we usually follow, and I actually agree with the idea that there is.
Does Mel's dynamic with Langdon stay warm and platonic, or does the show slowly push it into something else? What happens to Jesse after the ice storyline? Because that thread absolutely still feels unfinished. And can Dana keep being the emotional backbone of this world without eventually cracking herself? That is why I think Season 3 has so much upside. The show no longer needs to prove this setting works. It already does. Now it can start using that confidence to deepen the ensemble. January 2027 feels very real. Now, let's talk release. Based on everything we know, a January 2027 return feels extremely likely. If production begins in June and the timeline follows the same pattern as before, the show is basically keeping its rhythm intact. And that is great news, because one of the best things about The Pitt is that it has not become one of those shows that disappears for 3 years and expects viewers to still feel the same urgency when it comes back. That consistency matters. And the November setting is also really interesting. A 4-month jump means enough time has passed for things to change emotionally, but not so much that Season 2 no longer.
Different stress, different loneliness, different kind of exhaustion. And for a series this interested in emotional atmosphere, that matters a lot. So, yes, while we do not have an exact premiere date yet, early 2027 feels like the most realistic bet right now. Why Season 3 might be the best one yet. So here is my final take. Season 3 has the chance to be the best season of The Pitt, not because the finale left us with giant twists, but because the emotional pieces are finally in the right place. Robby is no longer just carrying silent damage. Now everyone sees it. Al-Hashimi is no longer just a new presence. Now she has a deeply personal fracture with the show's lead. Mohan's absence will matter even if she is technically still in the hospital universe. And the rest of the team now has enough definition to carry bigger pieces of the story. That is a strong foundation. The best version of Season 3 is not one that tries to top Season 2 through chaos. It is one that goes deeper into trust, healing, resentment, ambition, and the quiet ways people change after surviving each other. If the writers get that balance right, this next chapter could hit even harder than the last one. So, in my opinion, The Pitt Season 3 is shaping up to be less about what happened next and more about who these people are after what happened last. And honestly, that is exactly what I want from the show. What are you most excited to see?
Season 3? Robby's healing? Al-Hashimi pushing back? More of the night shift world? Or maybe some long overdue focus on characters like Javadi, Santos, or Jesse? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like, subscribe to Breakdown Epic, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.